You are listening to the Break Time Tech Talks podcast, a bite-sized tech podcast for busy developers, where we'll briefly cover technical topics, news snippets, and more in short time blocks. I'm your host, Jennifer Reif, an avid developer and problem solver with special interest in data, learning, and all things technology. This week, I dug in on a major Java framework in the space, Quarkus. I explored by building a starter application, which I'll fill you in on my learnings so far. Next, I came across an article on developer philosophy, and I thought some of the things there overlapped well with programming lessons that I've learned over the years and even encountered again recently. To get this show on the road, I started playing around with Quarkus Neo4j and the Object Graph Mapper, or the OGM, that comes along with that. Now, first of all, before I dive into the specifics on all of that, some of you may wonder, what is Quarkus? Maybe you haven't come across this before. Quarkus is a Kubernetes native Java framework designed to reduce an application's footprint, which is ideal for addressing challenges in deploying, running, and maintaining applications in cloud-based environments. Quarkus has become a major player in the list of frameworks, so naturally, I've wanted to try it out for a while, and I just finally blocked some time to do it. Quarkus and Spring actually are a lot similar in certain ways. First off, they both have an online application template interface for defining the project and the dependencies. For instance, in the Spring world, this is the Spring initializer at start.spring.io. And for Quarkus, this is code.quarkus.io, and it's their template code application builder that is their bootstrap interface for creating your project definition and your dependencies. You also get some object graph mapper capabilities for both Quarkus and Spring to automatically map your nodes and relationships. Typically with like an ORM or other types of mapping libraries, you'll be able to map your database entities to your domain classes inside your application. And Neo4j, being a graph database, has a similar thing where you have an object graph mapper library. If you've dealt with Neo4j and the Neo4j OGM before, prior to Spring 6, the Quarkus OGM will feel very familiar to you. However, now the OGM is baked into Spring Data Neo4j, where it is not baked into the Quarkus starter or dependency. So you do need to specify that as a separate dependency, and that's not available on their code template online. So you have to specify that separately after you download the zip file. Slight difference there, but they both feel very similar in a lot of ways. I have a little bit more background on the Spring ecosystem. So playing around with Quarkus, having a bit more experience in the Spring world, I saw a lot of similarities, which I hope to have a blog post that'll better outline those things and give you a starter for my learning journey. I also did start a project for a Quarkus Neo4j application. I did pattern it after a similar Spring application that I have on my GitHub as well, called the SDN Coffee Shop repository. If you are looking for the new Quarkus rendition, it's called Quarkus Coffee Shop, so that all of us can go back and compare what does Quarkus look like, what does the Spring rendition look like, and see the differences and the similarities. I also followed a few steps in a blog post I mentioned, I believe in the last podcast episode, that walked through how to create a project using Quarkus and then specifying the Neo4j dependency. However, it doesn't go into OGM and that dependency, so I had to kind of deviate a little bit, but I found the blog post really helpful for just getting the project started and including the proper dependencies that I needed, at least to start out. The documentation for Quarkus Neo4j felt a little bit verbose and over-engineered for a starter sample application, which is why I started at the blog post and then filled in gaps where necessary. I wanted something that was very concise and minimal as a starter application, so I hope I succeeded in doing that with this Quarkus Coffee Shop GitHub repository. Also, to springboard off of that, not as a pun intended there, I will be looking at and have started looking at LangChain4j and integrating that in my Quarkus application as well. This will be probably a separate repository on GitHub at some point in the near future. Spring has Spring AI, and while you can incorporate LangChain4j in Spring, I feel like it seems a little bit more of a natural integration to use Quarkus with LangChain4j. So I'm looking at the two and comparing some different things between the two setups. I will have more to talk about in future episodes, hopefully in the next episode on that. The article I came across this week was called Developer Philosophy. And I thought this was really interesting because there were a few things outlined in this article that I've learned over the years, and yet I've had to rehash or make those same choices again just recently. And I'll kind of talk a little bit about that. The first thing in this article is that it says, avoid where a ground up rewrite looks attractive. I found this really funny because I just talked about this in the last episode where I was going back and forth on whether to rebuild and rewrite the application for the Java Graph Academy Neo4j online course, whether I should rewrite that or just do incremental changes. And I ended up going down the rewrite path initially and just finding that was too messy and hard to untangle. So I backpedaled and went with the smaller, more incremental changes over time. And I just found it funny that this talks specifically about avoid situations where a ground up rewrite looks attractive. Been there, done that. I just talked about it in the last episode. I definitely agree here. If you can make incremental changes or small tweaks over time to improve and slowly refactor things to improve it, I think that is typically the better way to go. And the author does say that occasionally a rewrite is the better choice, but that's just few and far between. The next thing in the article is aim to be 90% done in 50% of the time. This goes back to software estimates. And I've talked a little bit about this before in previous episodes, but I have recently found this so true. In fact, just at the end of last week, I was working on a GitHub repository and I was tweaking some things, and by the time I hit, I guess just before lunch or about lunchtime, I was like, great, I have pretty much all of the pieces in place, the skeleton, I have the application running, it can connect to the database and so on. Things are looking great. I just have a few little finishing touches to do, and then I should have my afternoon to devote to other things, right? Well, it ended up being that those final few finishing touches took the rest of the day. So even though I had a starter app and everything was going really well, I thought it'd be wrapped up in a couple of hours, those last few little things ended up taking so much more time than what I anticipated. It's hard to estimate when things seem to be going so well and 90% of the code is done, but sometimes that last 10% can take much longer than what you anticipate. The next thing mentioned in the article is to automate good practice. People will forget to do things. No matter how many times you tell them, the only way to ensure it gets done is to automate it. This is why I think things like building powerful habits and setting reminders or automating certain tasks or things like autopay for bills and so on are just so popular. It's so easy to forget to do things. If we automate it, we ensure we don't forget. The next thing I found interesting is that it says, think about pathological data. Edge cases are a developer's entire job. And I think this could kind of go one of two ways. I think it's easy to fall into one of the extremes. Either you don't build any resiliency into your systems or your applications, or you try to hedge your bets and find every edge case and every niche little thing you might come across. I think those two extremes are not good on either end, but you need to find somewhere in the middle. You can't really try to plan for every outcome, but you should definitely build some resiliency in. It's too easy to break things and have things go wrong very fast if you don't have some sort of safety net to catch some of those things. There are a few other things listed in the article as well, but you'll have to check out the article to get the full list. This week, I delved into the world of Quarkus with Neo4j by building a sample application and also integrating the OGM library. I explored how it's similar and different from my existing knowledge and experiences. Next, the article I found this week reinforced some of the choices I've had to make recently, especially in falling prey to human nature on rewriting code, estimating, and remembering things. As always, thanks for listening and happy coding.